The bank manager looked me straight in the eyes and quietly said, "Mrs. Harper, your savings account balance is $12. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because my mind refused to accept what I'd just heard. "There has to be a mistake," I whispered. "My husband and I have been saving for almost 15 years. She slowly turned her computer screen toward me. There was no mistake. Every dollar was gone. And the transfer had been approved using my husband's online banking access just 48 hours earlier. At that moment, I thought I'd lost everything. I had absolutely no idea that my husband's mistress's husband was about to hand me the one thing my cheating husband never expected anyone to find. My name is Hannah Harper. I was 39 years old, and until that horrible morning, I believed I had an ordinary marriage. Not perfect. Not exciting. Just stable. I worked as a middle school science teacher in a quiet town outside Chicago. My husband, Brian, owned a small construction company. We had been married for 16 years. We didn't have children. Life simply hadn't worked out that way. Instead, we poured our love into our home. Every vacation we skipped. Every old car we kept driving. Every overtime shift Brian claimed he worked. Everything was supposed to help us retire early. At least, that's what I believed. Brian handled our investments because he always insisted he was better with numbers. I trusted him completely. That trust turned out to be the most expensive mistake of my life. I drove home from the bank in complete silence. Our house looked exactly the same. The flowers I'd planted were blooming. The porch swing moved gently in the wind. Nothing outside hinted that my entire life had just collapsed. Then I walked inside. Half of Brian's clothes were gone. His passport had disappeared. His laptop was missing. On the kitchen counter sat a single folded note. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even an explanation. It simply read, "I deserve to be happy. Don't try to find me." I sank onto the kitchen floor. 16 years. Reduced to one sentence. I called him. Straight to voicemail. Again. Nothing. Then I checked social media. I wish I hadn't. A woman I didn't recognize had posted a photo from a luxury resort in Mexico. Brian stood beside her wearing the same watch I'd bought him for our 15th anniversary. The caption read, "Finally free." My hands shook so badly I dropped my phone. But that wasn't the worst part. The next morning, I met with a divorce attorney named Melissa Grant. She listened patiently while I explained everything. When I finished, she didn't say, "I'm sorry." Instead, she asked a question. "Hannah, how much access did your husband have to your finances?" "All of it." She nodded slowly. "And how much access did you have?" I hesitated. "I never really checked." She sighed. "We need to look deeper." Over the next week, Melissa uncovered something terrifying. Brian hadn't only emptied our savings. He had secretly borrowed against our house. He had refinanced our mortgage without telling me. He had opened business credit lines using documents I had unknowingly signed years earlier. By the time Melissa finished calculating everything, the financial damage wasn't $240,000. It was nearly $900,000. I couldn't breathe. I wasn't just heartbroken. I was financially ruined. I thought it was finally over. Then someone knocked on my front door. Standing outside was a tall man in his early 40s. He looked exhausted. His eyes carried the same pain I felt every morning. "My name is David Collins," he said. I had never met him before. "I think our spouses are together." The world seemed to stop. He continued quietly. "My wife is Rachel." Rachel. The woman in the resort photos. I invited him inside. For several minutes, neither of us knew what to say. Finally, David placed a thick envelope on my dining table. "I've been collecting evidence for months." Inside were hotel receipts, bank transfers, phone records, photos. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. The affair had been going on for almost 3 years. 3 years. While Brian kissed me goodbye every morning. While we celebrated anniversaries. While we planned our retirement. He had already built another life. Tears rolled down my face. David quietly slid me a tissue. I know exactly how this feels. Then he said something that changed everything. I don't think they ran away because they fell in love. I looked at him. I think they ran because they're hiding something. That sentence echoed in my mind for the rest of the day. Melissa immediately reviewed every document David had collected. She noticed something strange. Several payments between Brian and Rachel weren't labeled as personal expenses. They were marked as consulting fees. Except Rachel wasn't a consultant. She managed a boutique clothing store. None of it made sense. Until Melissa requested Brian's business records. Then everything changed. The construction company Brian claimed was struggling had actually won several large government contracts. Millions of dollars had passed through the company. But huge amounts had quietly disappeared. Melissa leaned back in her chair. This isn't just an affair anymore. It's fraud. I stared at her. She continued. And if government contracts are involved. She didn't need to finish the sentence. Federal investigators became involved within weeks. I expected Brian to return and explain everything. He didn't. Instead, he disappeared completely. Months passed. Every day brought another shocking discovery. Hidden accounts. Fake invoices. Shell companies. The affair wasn't simply about romance. Rachel had been helping Brian move stolen money through fake businesses. Their relationship had started because they needed someone they could trust. Love came second. Greed came first. I thought that revelation would be enough. It wasn't. One evening David called. They found Brian. My heart pounded. Where? Florida. He was trying to sell a beach house. What beach house? David laughed bitterly. The one he secretly bought with your money. I honestly thought I couldn't be shocked anymore. I was wrong. The beach house wasn't in Brian's name. It belonged to Rachel. The investigators froze the property before the sale could happen. That single decision saved hundreds of thousands of dollars. The criminal investigation lasted almost a year. I attended every hearing. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I wanted answers. Brian never once looked at me. Rachel cried through most of the trial. Neither of them admitted responsibility. Until investigators played one voice recording. David had secretly recorded an argument months before they disappeared. Rachel's voice filled the courtroom. Hannah trusts you completely. Brian laughed. That's why this is so easy. The courtroom became completely silent. Even Brian lowered his head. That recording destroyed their defense. Months later, both were convicted on multiple financial crimes. Many of the stolen assets were recovered. Not all. But enough. The judge awarded me my share of the recovered money and cleared me of responsibility for the fraudulent loans Brian had created. Walking out of that courthouse, I expected to feel victorious. Instead, I just felt empty. Justice doesn't erase betrayal. It simply allows healing to begin. I assumed I'd never see David again. After all, the only thing we'd ever shared was heartbreak. A few weeks later, he called. I found something that belongs to you. Curious, I met him at a small coffee shop. He placed an old leather journal on the table. I found it inside Rachel's storage unit. It was mine. I'd been searching for it for years. Inside were handwritten lesson plans, old family recipes, and letters my late mother had written before she passed away. Brian had told me I'd accidentally thrown it away during our move. He had lied. Again. Holding that journal in my hands hurt more than losing the money. Because money can be earned again. Memories cannot. David smiled gently. I figured you'd want it back. I looked at him with tears in my eyes. Thank you. Over the next year, David and I stayed in touch. Not because we were lonely. Not because we were trying to replace anyone. Because we understood each other in a way very few people could. Some friendships are built through shared happiness. Ours was built through surviving the same storm. Looking back now, people sometimes ask me what the best revenge was. Was it watching Brian lose everything? Was it seeing him led into court in handcuffs? Honestly, no. The greatest revenge was rebuilding a life he believed he had destroyed forever. I kept teaching. I bought a smaller home. I planted another garden. I laughed again. Not immediately. But eventually. Brian stole my savings. He stole years of trust. He almost stole my future. But he never managed to steal the one thing that truly mattered. My ability to begin again. Sometimes the people who betray you think they've written the ending of your story. What they don't realize is that they've only removed themselves from it. The next chapter is still yours to write. And when you choose honesty over bitterness, courage over fear, and hope over revenge, life has a strange way of giving you something far more valuable than the money you lost. It gives you yourself back.